Sabah, world-renowned for her ethnic diversity. However, this multiracial mix has also given rise to some titanic power tussles between the leaders. The battle for racial supremacy became more intense the day she became part of Malaysia. On that historic day, Tun Fuad Stevens, the leader of the Kadazan people, led North Borneo into a new nation and swore his oath of office as Sabah's first chief minister.
It was definitely my husband's greatest moments in politics. To be able to serve the people was always what drove him to take the challenge.
The challenge was to unite the people of Sabah. It needed a leader who was diplomatic. Tun Fuad Stevens was such a leader. He was a true Sabahan. Born Donald Aloysius Marmaduke Stevens on the 14th of September 1920, the life of Tun Fuad Stevens was a checkered one. There were times he sank to the depths of despair, but time and again he fought his way up with vigor and optimism. He was larger than life, a man of the people. From early on, he gained a reputation as a petition and letter writer. In short, he was a champion for the oppressed.
People used to come to him, and at first there was no payment, but of course they came to him to ask to write letters for them.
He works quite late sometimes, day and night, on his old typewriter.
And then he realized from there that these people didn't have enough information about the law and about what their rights were. So that's when he started to think he should start writing columns about that.
His passion slowly turned into a profession when he started writing articles for the North Borneo News, a fortnightly paper in Sandakan. His critical views would challenge the colonial government.
He always write, I think, is critical of the British government. And that's how I think the governor at that time noticed him and probably recruited him to be a member of the Legislative Assembly. I think that's how he got noticed. And while he was a member of the EXCO, he still write on all issues, which he feel very strongly for the people.
His lifelong ambition was fulfilled when, with the help from his brother, Ben Stevens, he started his own paper, the Sabah Times. Donald's paper would consume most of his time. He ensured his paper had a column about his race, the Kadazans. He believed that they were by right of birth and history the true owners of North Borneo.
He actually became the strength and the pillar for the society and for us. He made us feel proud of us ourselves,
He has opened the eyes of the Kadazan people in as far as politics and daily business is concerned. And I think this is one of the impression that he has given to the people of the Kadazan that make him liked by them.
Although being only half Kadazan, the Kadazan people warmed up to Donald. He would religiously attend their society meetings and actively contribute towards their cause.
He came to the meeting and said, I have just got word from the colonial administration is that the Kadazan Harvest Festival has been approved as a public holiday. But we have been fighting for it, you see. So everybody was very happy, and the elders of the Kadazan who were present then stood up and proclaimed him as the Huguan Siao.
Donald Stevens was made the modern-day Huguan Siao, which means paramount leader, the most revered position in the Kadazan society. With his standing as a member of the Legislative Council, Donald was now the voice of his people. Despite his friendship with the British, he became a firm critic of their measures. As a result, Donald caught the eye of the colonial government, and they see him as a potential state leader.
The British, in the late 50s, early 60s, decided they want to give up all their colonies. So the British governor then told Donald that, hey, please get ready, the British wants to withdraw.
The news of the colonial government's intentions was met with much joy. Yet, despite the feeling of liberty, Donald Stevens and his childhood friend Datu Mustafa, the leader of the Bajau community, would have to carefully navigate their beloved state's journey into nationhood. The British were leaving. North Borneo was gearing for independence. Then, an announcement was made. It was about the unification of 5 territories: Malaya, Singapore, Sarawak, Brunei, and North Borneo. It was known as the Malaysia Plan, mooted by the Malaya Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman. Donald, at first, wasn't too sure if it was the best thing for North Borneo.
The initial reaction of the leaders from the Borneo territories, i.e. Sarawak, Brunei, and Sabah, was one of rejection. They rejected this Malaysia Plan proposal outright.
At first, the people of interior, they were against the concept of Malaysia. Completely, they don't want. Especially the Murut and also the Bajau, they say, we don't want anymore. You get the British out, then you get another dictator, he said, That's what they told me, he said.
The people rejected the Malaysia Plan idea. The British, however, had a different view.
The governor told Donald Stevens that the British supported the idea, and asked whether the leader of North Borneo, Sabah, and Sarawak will come along with that idea.
After being shown tangible achievements brought about since Malayan independence, Donald had a change of heart. The sudden shift was also helped by the persuasive abilities of Singapore Premier Lee Kuan Yew.
Sikit tuan-tuan, kalau lama begini tak dapat merdeka Malaysia. Merdeka Malaysia!
During several discussions between the two, Lee Kuan Yew managed to convince Donald that Singapore and North Borneo needed to be one nation.
They were very close in the early stage of Malaysia, In fact, I think Kuan Yew to a great extent convinced him that Malaysia is the best for North Borneo at that time. Because Donald was the last to go on board to support Malaysia.
Donald went on to convince his people to accept the Malaysia plan. He explained the benefits of the plan and put their fears to rest. His enthusiasm managed to win their hearts. The people agreed, and so, in 1963, Sabah became part of Malaysia, with Donald as the chief minister. It was the high point of his political career thus far, to be able to lead his people into nationhood. However, the problems were just brewing. The governor, Tun Mustafa, too, wanted to wield his power.
There are two major definitive race, and that is the indigenous Muslim, Suluk Bajau, and the indigenous Kadazan, Dusun. Both wanted to be the successor to the British. You know, it's a battle for supremacy, in other words, as the governors of the country.
The battle was between Upko and Usno, headed by Donald and Tun Mustafa, respectively. The friendship of the once blood brothers would be put to the test.
So there was some dispute and argument, upquoting that Donald should continue as chief minister. But finally, the matter was resolved. Tunku Abdul Rahman then come out with a formula. Okay, Donald, you become the Minister of Sabah FA. You coordinate all the federal project and everything. So he was quite happy with it.
Tunku's decision to appoint Donald as the Minister of Sabah Affairs was seen as a compromise to settle the issue with Tun Mustafa. It was also seen as a way for Tunku to keep a watchful eye on Donald. His directness didn't really sit well with Tunku.
From the beginning, Tunku Abdul Rahman, he said, I don't like the man because he's too open criticizing the government. That's all he said,
Their relationship was further strained when Tunku called for a secret meeting without Donald and decided to expel Singapore when racial riots broke out.
He was very upset, when Tun Razak told him that on Monday we're going to pass the bill to allow for the separation of Singapore.
To show his displeasure, he resigned as Minister of Sabah Affairs. Donald's fall from grace was worsened when he was forced to dissolve his beloved UPCO, who were abandoned by the Sabah Alliance after the 1967 elections. Donald had been removed from Sabah politics, but deep down inside, he knew he would return. Donald Stevens was going through one of the most difficult times of his life. His party had been dissolved, and he was broke. Then suddenly, in July 1968, reprieve came. In order to keep Donald out of Tun Mustafa's reign, Tunku appointed Donald as the Malaysian High Commissioner to Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji.
It was a great time, great place to grow up for us. Like my mom said, it was one of the best times of her life. No politics. It was just a lot of family life in between the work that he did and representing Malaysia, a job which I think he did very well, actually. He was a great diplomat. He made a lot of friends. My parents also entertained a lot at that time, so we met a lot of people, made lifelong friends, and it was just a very happy time. I think that was my best time in Australia. No politics, nothing. It was so good, and meeting a lot of people. We get to know a lot of people, and we go to the countrysides, picnic every weekends with the family, with the staff. Sometimes he plays football with the kids Even in the cold, he will go out there and sit down and watch them.
Donald was a hit with the Australians. He significantly improved ties between the countries. It was also during this time, in 1971, Donald converts to Islam. He became known as Muhammad Fuad Stevens. In 1973, Fuad Stevens returns to Sabah. Upon his arrival, it was rumored that Tun Razak, the new Prime Minister, had talks with him about a secret agenda.
At that time, there were very strong rumors that the late Tun Mustafa wanted to take Sabah out of Malaysia.
Tun Razak needed to nurture an opposition party to topple Tun Mustafa's USNO in the next state elections. Fuad Stevens was caught in between. He knew his country needed him at their most critical hour.
Tun Razak was quite confident that if he lead the party, there are chances that Berjaya can win.
As a result, Fuad Stevens and one-time political adversary Haris Saleh teamed up and formed the Berjaya Party. Fuad Stevens was ready to do battle once again.
People of Sabah are ready for a change. They want change, and change for the better, I think. So to us, it's not a better, because the people were ready.
Intense campaigning began. Fuad was campaigning tirelessly. He toured the state with his protege, Peter Mojuntin. Fuad's linguistic skills with the various communities of Sabah won their hearts.
It was easygoing for him because the Kadazan have always adored him as the leader, and they welcome him, despite the fact that he was no longer a Christian, but they still look at him as their Huguansio. So that basically, I think, was the reason why it was easier for the Kadazan and for the Chinese to vote for the Berjaya.
The leaders of both Berjaya and USNO were anxiously awaiting the results.
Who labored faithfully behind the scenes to make it one of the most fully supported elections of all time.
When the votes had been counted, it was announced that Berjaya had won 28 seats in the 48-seat Legislative Assembly. The Berjaya leaders celebrated their fairy tale-like triumph. The mighty Tun Mustafa had been toppled. Fuad Stevens had returned from the dead. His amazing turnaround is surely one of the greatest political comebacks in the history of Malaysian politics. He was back with the people. He was their leader once again. On the morning of June the 6th, 1976, 44 days from taking over as Chief Minister, Fuad Stevens and his cabinet ministers stepped onto a plane heading home to Kota Kinabalu. They had just concluded crucial talks with Tengku Razali regarding Sabah's oil royalty.
Left heading 250.
The mood was one of joy. The plane never arrived at its destination. Known as the 666 tragedy, the plane crash shook the state. The tragedy took the lives of Sabah's great men, and with it, the hope for change.
We would have liked to see a greater role for Sabah within Malaysia.
On the Kadazan side, I think has given us pride of place in Sabah and in the history of us.
He went through trials and tribulations through politics during the war. He had his moments with illness as well. But I think, at the end, I think he triumphed through all that. He became someone in Sabah's politics who to this day is still remembered.
Tun Fuad Stevens will always be in the hearts of every Sabahan. Even though his dreams were short-lived, he managed to inspire his people to be the best that they can be. He was their shining light, a beacon of hope. He will forever remain the true Sabahan.